Hello and welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, our guest is Thomas Lopez, radio producer, and my musical collaborator and co-host is Raul Midon. Hello, Raul.
Hello.
Great to have you.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
It's what I've been binging on your music, and I'm feeling
cool.
uplifted.
Yeah. I got a new song out today, actually.
No way. I missed that.
Yeah. It's called Keep On Keeping On. I think should be on Spotify and YouTube. I just did the Jennifer Hudson TV show a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the record isn't coming out till March, we decided we should get a single out there before, the show, so that when it'll tape on the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
It'll air on the 22nd.
Okay. So for people that don't know about you and your music, could you just give a short introduction?
Yeah, so I'm a singer-songwriter, guitarist. I grew up in New Mexico. Took a lot of flamenco guitar lessons with the people that would come. My dad owned a restaurant with flamenco dancers in the summertime, and after he got rid of the restaurant, he came back and worked at the same location, but was a different name, but they had flamenco in the summertime. So I would take lessons with the guitar player. Started when I was about 6. And then I eventually realized that I wanted to do music. Not only that, but being blind, there's not a whole ton of job opportunities out there. So I went to University of Miami, music school, and it was an incredible experience. Learned a lot about, I had one-on-one lessons every week with a great guitar teacher. And then I worked in the studios for a bunch of years as a session singer, doing commercials and stuff like that. And then started to put together bands and write songs. I would get the gigs in these restaurants, playing songs that people knew, and I would slowly weave in my own songs. And I did it in such a way as that they kind of didn't really notice it, as long as I played something that they knew. And then eventually after doing a bunch of gigs, I got a gig with Shakira in Shakira's band. And sorry, there's all distractions. And I ended up touring with Shakira for a couple of years, and that was an amazing experience because I had always just had gigs in town. So all of a sudden I was touring all over the world with Shakira.
As a guitarist?
As a guitarist, singer, and percussionist. I was doing all three, sometimes simultaneously. And the crazy thing about that was the things for me that were hard were I was doing it by myself. I didn't have an assistant. So I was packing my suitcase, getting down to the lobby of the hotels every day, trying to figure out, what was going on as a blind person. And I remember, one of the big things was, this was show business. I mean, we were on TV, and I had to, pick out I had to do my own clothes. So my wife had these outfits and she would put them together, and I would tell the hotel, when I was getting them cleaned, I would tell them, could you please put them back together? They never did it. They never did. And at one point, my wife got the bright idea, why don't you just get 5 of the same things or whatever, 6 of the same things. So then there's no way you can mess it up. The same color shirt, the same color pants.
You just dress in black.
Yeah, pretty much. So After that, I kind of realized that I was sort of done with the Miami scene, and I moved to New York City in 2002, which I do not recommend in one's 30s. If you're going to do it in your 20s, because it's no joke. But and we moved right after 9/11.
Wow.
So yeah, it was. I don't think I would have the courage to do it today, to be honest. I don't know. When you're young, you just have courage, kind of this dumb confidence thing, and I did it. And we worked in this crazy dump called Arthur's Tavern. I shouldn't say dump. This crazy place, old club called Arthur's Tavern in the West Village, for tips. Passing the hat. After I had done all of this glamorous stuff with Shakira, like Saturday Night Live, and we did Rosie O'Donnell, we did we did Jay Leno, and we did all that. And here I was passing the hat in this pretty dingy club in New York. But about a year after that, I got an offer to play. This guy came into my dressing room. He goes, "How would you like to play Carnegie Hall?" And I said, "Yeah, someday. That would be good." He said, "How about next month?" This is the kind of thing that happens in New York.
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah, wow, with an orchestra?" He goes, "No, solo." So I was part of a show called The Movie Music of Spike Lee. And I played 2 songs. And I was with, great. I was with Diane Reeves was on the show. Bruce Hornsby was on the show. I can't remember who else. Maybe, but all known people. And I was a complete, total unknown. And they panned the show in the New York Times, but they said that I stole the show.
Wow.
So that was kind of the start of it. And then we just started to do, shopping. And I did it in kind of a very old school way, which is to go to their offices and play live instead of trying to shop a demo, which, I heard from people, they would throw those in the trash like no tomorrow. They would get them and throw them away, not even listen to them. So I played for all the record companies that were existing at the time. And I always got the same, well, what kind of a record do you want to make, And I would, at first I would come up with all this, well, I'm, interested in being eclectic and blah, blah, blah. And after a while, I realized that it was a BS
the mic's
question.
just dropped. Oh.
Hello?
Oh, now it's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I realized it was a BS question. So when they would ask me what kind of a record you want to make, I would say one that sells.
That's very good. But I can't believe you make your own records now. You're producing them yourself in a studio that you designed yourself. How does that work?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I would say I designed it, but I use wow, there's a little fuzz. What is that? Anyway, I use is that distortion? You hear that?
I don't hear anything. It sounds okay
good
to me.
So I would I use a digital audio workstation software. For years, I used a thing called Sonar or Cakewalk, and some very enterprising people designed a software that overlays that with a screen reader, so that you need to be able to manipulate audio. You need to be able to edit it. You need to be able to use all of the sort of plugins, the compressors and the effects, and all of that is accessible with screen reader. And the things that you would normally do with a mouse, you do them with a keyboard. So you end up memorizing tons and tons of keystrokes to do everything from manipulating a compressor to moving audio around to checking levels, and all of that is, I used a thing called Cake Talking and Cakewalk. And this guy, David Pinto, was the designer, and the company was called Dancing Dots, and it was amazing. I just recently changed because they stopped updating it. They sold Cakewalk was sold to Roland, and now I think it's called BandLab. And so now I use a thing called Samplitude.
How do you see them on? How do you see them on the screen? Because you're working with different tracks. How do you see which is in the right position?
Well, you hear it. So, for instance, with the arrow keys, you can hear what track you're on, and then you can go through the strip of the with different keystrokes. With the tab key or the arrow keys, you can go through, the status of the track, and certain buttons you can check peak audio. Sometimes I started to. I mean, my initial thing with recording was to record very hot, which of course is in digital is not a good thing because you get to zero and it's peaked. So, but you can check peak audio. You can hit a button and it reconfigures the screen so that you're looking at the meters, so that the screen reader, you clap your hands and then you can hit and see what the level is. -2, -6, -10, whatever. If it says 0, you got a problem.
Yeah, can't imagine that to put together a whole album with multi tracks in each one. You have to have a huge
crazy
mind map.
hard.
Yeah,
it's actually crazy hard, and the stuff is not. I mean, it's not a bunch of people being paid millions of dollars to do this stuff. So sometimes it can be a little buggy, in terms of it working. But you learn. And I was around recording for a long time. I was around professionals, so I knew. I went to every mixing session for my albums. I loved it. I would rather be in a mixing session than be out at a party.
Oh, so you learn a lot over the years then to what to look for and what to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned about EQing, and then I have this incredible engineer that I've been working with since I signed with Arif. And that shopping thing I was talking about, I eventually played for Arif Martin and Blue Note at EMI, and he signed me, and I ended up recording State of Mind at in Soho at a place called the Magic Shop in New York City, and that was kind of the beginning of not being a local musician, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your career has come through a real arc. You're virtually a one-man band. I mean, you do everything on the. I've seen you playing, and it's Latin, it's soul, it's jazz. You're playing the guitar. You're doing like a mouth trumpet. And you're banging on the guitar.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done a lot of collaborations. I mean, I did
as well. That's what I wanted to say.
Record
that,
with or one tune with Herbie Hancock.
Right.
Really came out well. Called "I Just Called to Say I Love You." It's a totally different version of that song. I wrote a song with Bill Withers.
Yeah, so you've straddled both. Yeah, Stevie Wonder as well. I mean, you've completely straddled the arc. You can do it on your own, but you can also collaborate well with other people. So it's a wonderful that you've managed to. You're a virtuoso.
All right, I keep on keeping on. That's all. Yeah. So in 2008, I moved. Still, sometimes wonder what it would have been like if I'd stayed in New York, but I moved. I bought this house here, and I have the studio here. And if this house in New York City would probably be like, I don't know, $20 million.
Where are you now?
I'm in Maryland.
Okay, that's better weather too, isn't it?
A basement here, and I have my studio and my ham radio equipment here.
Yeah. But you're also on tour a lot. I've seen you all around the world. You're playing Japan. And,
all over the place. I start again in March. So I have time to finish the album, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah,
no, not hopefully. I have to finish the album.
And you're also doing this one by yourself.
Yes. You know, by myself in the sense that I'm doing the tracking and the recording. I'm putting together the stuff in my studio. Then I get Michael O'Reilly, who's the engineer, to mix it. I could mix it myself, but I think, you know, after working on the tunes and putting it together, I need another set of ears to mix it. I always think I can do it, and then Michael O'Reilly does a better job than I could have done. So I just let him do it.
And do you have collaborators on this track as well, on this album?
Say that again?
Are there collaborators?
Yeah, I've got a band. Some people that I always use. I've got Andres Forero playing drums and percussion. He's actually the drummer in what is that?
That's Thomas. He's here early.
Yeah, no. Well, what is that show? Oh, jeez, I forgot the name of the show now. On Broadway, that's really, really popular. Anyway, yeah, I've got some collaborators, and I'm not finished yet, so hopefully we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you also have such a varied life and all these different. I've also wanted to ask you about these jazz cruises you go on, these super cruises with all these wonderful musicians on the same boat.
It's actually awesome because you don't have to pack up your suitcase every day. You stay on the boat. It's 24-hour a day, you know, food. It's interesting, you know, where I spend it's stupid. Well, one is if you want to be on the internet, it's a little expensive. And I usually, you buy a package. And then if you want to drink espresso, which I'm kind of addicted to, I hate burnt American coffee. So I get charged for that on the cruises.
Yeah,
they let you
like
have
paradise.
all the burnt coffee, but if you want espresso, you got to pay for it.
Oh, nightmare. Well, let's talk a little bit about our guest. Why did you pick Thomas as of all the people in the world you could speak to?
Well, you know, I love audio, as you can imagine, and I've always been into listening to audio. I was a fan of that. We had a show on radio in the 70s called the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, and it was on every night. I think it was 5 nights a week. It might have been 7 days a week. It was on every night, and it was hosted by E.G. Marshall, and it was very scary, sort of macabre stories. I mean, they weren't your average. It was definitely grown-up stuff. And it was 3 acts, and I just loved it. And I loved the sort of, you know, those radio is designed to be listened to. And most things, you know, as a blind person, if you're at a movie, you're at a disadvantage because you don't know half the time what's happening because they just assume you can see it. So the good thing about radio is everything is designed to be listened to. So and then when I was living in New Mexico, when I was a little kid, I heard little snippets of some of Thomas's work. I remember listening to the Fourth Tower of Inverness on our station in New Mexico, KUNM. And, but I, you know, was kind of this thing that I heard, wow, that's really cool. But I never sort of followed up on it. And when I was in New York, I discovered the Jack Flanders stuff, and I bought one of those. He sold one of these memory sticks with all of them. I bought the whole thing, and I just and it's on all of my devices now. And I just it's kind of inexplicable. Not only do I love the audio, I love the attention to sound, and I also love the unique thing about what Thomas does is it's not just adventure stories. They have, you know, sort of spiritual wisdom woven into it. And it's all about other dimensions in inner space, as opposed to, you know, when we were growing up, it was all about going to the moon and blah, 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 and going to outer space. And this is like this is the dimensions of consciousness, I guess I would say. And to me, that I had some pretty hard times when I was in New York, and I always found the audio dramas just something that could kind of take me out of my sort of worries, and in a way that was very different from even reading. I mean, I'm an Audible listener as well. I love reading audiobooks, but because of the attention to detail in sound, this is a whole other league of listening.
All right. Well, let's bring in the man himself. Hello, Thomas. Welcome to Podsongs.
I'm happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. So we're going to write a song inspired by the conversation here.
Good luck.
Yeah. So you better be inspiring.
I'll do my best. I'll try.
But you've already been so inspiring to Raul. He's listened to you for so many years. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Raul now. He's wants to talk to you about all the wonderful work you've done in the past.
So, hello, Thomas. It's an honor, absolute honor to talk to Meatball Fulton. And I'm just a huge fan of what you do. I've just gotten the streaming thing. I'm going to definitely be checking that out, because there's my big familiarity is with the Jack Flanders stuff, and I know you've done a lot more stuff, but I have the whole what I think you called the blue plate special or something.
Right. Yeah.
And so the first thing I just wanted to, was there something growing up? Obviously, you must have listened to radio. What? Just give me a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of radio you listened to, and maybe what inspired you to start doing this.
Well, as a kid, because I go back pre-television, and so as a kid, I used to listen to like Jack Flanders, the I Love a Mystery series, which had Jack, Doc, and Reggie, and it is a great series, by the way, and it used sounds in ways that weren't really used very often. That is a sense of like somebody who's stranded, hanging on a pole, and like in a well or something, and the mic is getting the sort of reverb of the well, and then they move into the character hanging on the rope, and you can hear the rope squeaking and so on, and his voice close, and so the shifting perspective or point of view was really brilliant, and so I don't know how it started out. I wrote plays for theater which never got produced, and somehow when we started ZBS, which was an audio commune, we started in 1970, and so we've been around for 53 years now. But when we started, we had our own recording studio, and so it was obvious that, and we were producing things for radio, like interviews and so on. And it seemed kind of obvious that to do a radio play or radio plays, and sort of got into this in a strange way, because back in the late 60s, I was working at a radio station in Philadelphia, which is now WMMR. Is that it? No, probably not WMMR. But anyway, WUHY is what they've changed their call letters. But wait a second. Yeah. So I'm trying to get all my thoughts together here. But I decided to do an interview with Frank Zappa, who was in New York at the time. And at the end of the interview, I asked Frank, like, who's a musician that you really like, that's sort of up and coming? And Zappa just brightened. I mean, he literally shone, you know. And he said, Captain Beefheart, Don Van Vliet. Wow. And so, he has an album coming out, Trot Bass Replica. So when Trot Bass came out, the double LP, and I listened, I went, oh my God, I'd never heard anything like this. I mean, even to this day, people that have never heard of me, if they hear any of the songs, they've never heard anything.
Oh, like no, it. There's nothing like it out there. I can definitely say that. The Captain Beefheart stuff is incredible. It's and completely unique.
Yeah, and so I wanted to do an interview with Beefheart, and so I called because it was Zappa's company. What was it called? Bizarre or something.
Lumpy Gravy or something like that?
What was that?
Was it Lumpy Gravy or something like that?
No, not that. But anyway, so I arranged with the promotions band to do an interview, and I flew out to L.A., and Beefheart was living near Topanga Canyon, and it was with the band. You know, they were in a separate building right next door. And I walked in. Beefheart was sitting on a sofa, and I set up the mic and I started the interview. And he looked at me kind of odd. I didn't know it at the time, but no one had told him that somebody was coming there to interview him, right? And I'd never done an interview with so many long pauses before, because Beefheart would answer in 3 or 5 words, and they were so poetic, and I couldn't understand what the heck he was saying. I mean, was he answering my question, or was he saying something else? Well, it turns out he was answering my question, but on levels I had never experienced before. And so we went through this interview, and he was very, very nice. And it wasn't until later I found out no one told him I was showing up. And we started talking, and I needed a place to stay. So I said, you can stay here. So I stayed there for a couple of days, and just kept talking to Beefheart. And it was extraordinary, because what would happen would be friends or people he doesn't know, fans showing up at the door, and he would talk to them. And the way he would talk to them, they would go blah, 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 and he would go blah, 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 and answer in the most exquisite, compressed way. But he did answer, but on levels that are kind of strange to realities that most people experience. And I noticed one day that this was whenever I was out in LA, I'd sing at Beefheart's. Okay, so this is one day when I had I arrived. It was late afternoon, and started talking to Beefheart, and I was going blah blah blah, and he was going blah, blah, blah. And then we talked all night long, and it was light as the light was getting, the day was getting light again. I noticed I had finally gotten it down to sort of beep, 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 and he'd go beep, beep. And it was, Beefheart never said to me, what do you think of this? Because he loved to throw out ideas. He would always say, how does this feel? And he would talk to you, and you'd feel it in your chest. It would bypass your brain. I never knew you could communicate to someone without using your brain, but going directly to your chest. And you could feel it. And it felt right, and you say, feels good, And so Beefheart one day asked me, what do you do? Because I was working at, before that, I was working at a radio station in Montreal. I was about to leave the radio station in Montreal, and I had some short pieces I had done, 4, 5-minute pieces, and he wanted to hear them, so I played them, and he liked them, and then he said, "No, your work is longer. You should be doing longer pieces." And so I started thinking about that. When we started ZBS, I had already had the idea of doing a series for radio that would be radio stations back then wanted quarter-year series, that is 3 months or 13 weeks. And so I decided to do The Fourth Tower of Inverness, which was a series. And that came out as a daily and also the weekend. That was about 7-minute episodes a day, 65 of them. And then the weekend, they were edited into 30 minutes. And so there were certain stations would only play half hours, so it went to them. And most stations that played the dailies also played on the weekend.
Let me ask you something about that. Did you do the casting in terms of the voices, like, with Fourth Tower of Inverness? Obviously you had, Dave Adams, and you had a little Frida. Tell me about how did you listen to people and say, oh, that would be a great voice for this, or how does that work?
Well, part of it was just people at ZBS, our radio commune, and like Patty, who did Little Frida, and I didn't know if she could do a Little Frida voice, but she could, and a few other characters played small parts. But the main character, Jack Flanders, I had. We would do this as I would write it. That is, and I never knew what would happen next. And, I would write enough, say 1 day recording, or sometimes 2 days of recording. And Jack Flanders was more of a two-fisted sort of Indiana Jones, but this predates Indiana Jones.
Right.
But, an action kind of guy. And the actor I had in mind had to cancel out because this is a New York actor. And so the person that did Lady Jowl was someone I knew back in Philadelphia. And she said, well, I have a friend who I think could do this part. And so I said, okay, I'll audition him on the telephone. And he was very different. But for the Jack Flanders I had in mind, but he had a sensitivity to him. And sort of, well, there was just a quality about his voice that gave Jack a lot more depth.
And this was Robert Lorick, right?
Right, and took away from that two-fisted, idea that I originally had. And he was not a violent person, and he did not get into fights with anybody. And also, too, for the Fourth Tower, I decided, can you do a mystery without anyone dying? And I thought, why not? I don't want any bodies, so that's sort of how it all started.
Jack almost gets killed in Fourth Tower with the
all sorts of things happen. Yeah, it wasn't until I had gotten well into the series that I realized that why these things were happening was they were people that were more, in their own crazy way, more advanced, in the sense spiritually advanced, and they wanted to wake him up, and he and they put him through all these tests.
Yeah.
That's what was going on. I had no idea at the time I was writing it, the first part of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I find the whole thing. So in terms of the weaving in of spiritual things, I'm interested in how you you weave in things from the Buddha and
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was behind this that is I was in from 60 to about 65 or some 66. Yeah. I was in Berkeley, and the whole free speech movement, the whole awakeness, so to say, that's a term they use now in a non-English way, but the wake, but people waking up to something else going on. There was a separation between the generations that hadn't happened in a while, and there was the supporters of which happened later, of course, the Vietnam War, and the ones that were usually younger. But anyway, there was so much going on, and also an awareness of Buddhism was happening, and sort of people, you could feel I mean, Berkeley was such a unique place to be because you could feel the energy coming in. I mean, you could step outside and you could feel it. My God, it's like something's happening, and the feeling there at the time was that where the lawn ended, the rest of America began, and then later, of course, other places started to happen in a sense of people seeing there's other realities that are out there, and well, I don't know. It was just at the Summer of Love when that happened. Right. Just before it happened, I went to London, swinging London. So in short, I just happened to be in places where there was people were seeing reality in different ways, and also the rock music that was happening, and that had you never got that on the radio, it seemed, before, except for a few unique stations. So there was so much happening, and when I arrived back here and started to write The Fourth Tower, there were an awful lot of people, listeners and so on, that had never heard any of this stuff. They had no idea that, that people were seeing things in ways that they had not seen before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm kind of interested in what the scene was like at the Commune. Like, that meant you lived together, the actors all lived together and hung out, and I mean, did you guys smoke a lot of weed or what?
No, we smoked no grass at all.
Oh,
because we had no money. I mean, literally, people, of course, did before, but once we got there, it was like, this is like, and also too, when you're out in the country, and this is in the country, and I mean, right outside the door, about 100 feet from the front door is the Hudson River. And right. And there's no other houses nearby except for one, and that was our recording studio. We built recording studio. So we had two houses plus a barn, which I lived in, and so to have essentially, it was 12 people were the main people. So we lived in all different sort of buildings here, and the people were all college educated, and we were set up not as a commune, but as a business. That was the purpose of it.
And did Dave Adams, was he part of that?
No, Dave was an old friend from Philadelphia, and I just loved Dave's voice. I wanted black voices, but I didn't know anyone.
Yeah. That's
Dave I did know.
That was an interesting thing to me because Dave and Mojo was this sort of kind of crazy, some yoga, some voodoo.
Right.
It was really a very interesting, and it adds a lot of dimension to the thing because, he's coming from I remember the adventures when Jack Flanders goes to the island with the rich guy and they all confront what do you want to say? Their demons,
Mm-hmm.
and Mojo confronts this sort of demon of white people. I mean, there's a lot in there. There's a lot of stuff going on there that is, conveys a lot without preaching, in a sense. That's the thing that's amazing about the stories to me, is that you convey a lot, but it doesn't have this preachy feeling to it, because it's a story.
No, that was interesting, because in the fourth tower, there were a lot of little wise sayings, little Sufi and Zen and so on, little wisdoms. And there were just a few words. And the interesting thing about it, they are so potent that if you hear it years later, they have another level of meaning that you didn't realize that was in there. So anyway, I told the actors, I said, throw it away. Do not underline it. Do not give it any importance. Just make it part of your conversation. And
I'm interested that when you made the scripts, how, I mean, obviously it's radio, so you don't have to, right. Are they reading the scripts? I mean, how does that work? Or do they memorize it, or how does it work?
Well, no, they do. You write differently for Fritz, because Fritz hears everything. I mean,
if you're rattling paper or something,
he sure does. Yeah, exactly. Right. And also, too, you can't. I mean, normally, for example, a door closing depends where it is on the room, and if it's further back in the room, that is your sound effects of a door. If it's further back in the room, you add a little room presence or reverb to it. If it's up close, that sound is different. I mean, that's how you create you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I wanted to say, just explain a little bit, because probably most people don't understand what the difference is, what Fritz is doing, the binaural aspect of it. It's three-dimensional sound.
Right. Well, it happens that with normal sound recording, that is sound production, where you're adding an effect, you just put it where you want. You can't do that with Fritz.
Right.
Fritz hears a door that's 15 feet away, and you have to record that door 15 feet away. So you do as many live, adding things live as possible. And if you can't, then you have to know which way Fritz is pointing, because just as we turn our heads and we hear sound differently. Our ears pick up one sound more than another. But what's interesting is if you stand up, Fritz hears you standing up. And he hears you sitting down. I mean, you physically hear it.
That's the thing that I think most people have not experienced, is when you're listening to something in binaural sound, particularly with headphones, you can actually hear things above you. You can actually hear things behind you, whereas a stereo recording is just left and right. And it's a pretty freaky experience. If, I remember the first time I heard binaural sound, and it was like somebody cutting hair, and they were like cutting behind your ears, and it was freaky to hear. It's like, it's kind of like, I guess, virtual video now, what they're getting, but it's like that, but with audio.
Right.
So in terms of the music, you have Tim Clark doing the music. How did you guys redo the plays without the music and then put the music in later? And what, was it MIDI? Tell me a little bit about how the music aspect worked.
Yeah, I certainly learned a lot working with Tim. Well, one of the things that for radio drama, I wanted music, but can't afford.
Yeah.
Number one, you don't want to use pop music, because that'll take over. It'll too distracting. So you want some kind of music that adds to it, but I never liked music that was sort of background. Now, one of the things when Tim, I think there was something called, well, anyway, later in the 70s, Tim was here as an artist in residence. We had various people like Laurie Anderson and all sorts of people coming here.
Yeah, you had Abby Hoffman.
Abby Hoffman. So,
and you had, and then that's the other thing I want to ask you about later is the whole coin machine thing that you had with little snippets of Ram Dass.
Oh, right. Yeah. But anyway, so Tim was at the time that Tim's American, he was living up in Montreal working as a composer for a planetarium there. And he had all his music and he said, here, you can use this. And so he gave it to me and I started writing pieces where the music would fit in. And then later, when we started one called Ruby, which decided to do that as 65 daily episodes, but only 3 minutes a day, a short one. And I wanted the music to be an essential part of it. And Tim, even in these 3-minute pieces, which we started working with, Tim said, well, where's the breaks? And I said, the what? And he said, well, you can't just have the same music. It's got to change. Things have to happen. And so I started writing that essentially after at least a minute, you have a break of either a scene. The scene changes or something happens.
Right. A way to sort of bridge.
Exactly. And also too, I learned working with Tim, I wanted to breathe so that the music comes through. So the music is more and more that the music is an essential part of it, that it's filling in the part. I'm not having the voices fill there. I have the music. So the music is right up there, mixed hot. And you can't normally do that because the music will always wipe out the voice.
Wipe the dialogue.
With Tim, he'll put filters in. So he filters out the low or the mid frequencies where our voice is. And so his music does not have that. So the voice can come through with the music being pretty darn loud. And and so there was I just learned and even to this day I write knowing Tim's going to do the music, and I write with pauses all the time. That part of it. I have the actors do it, but I often open up their voices. So I know that his music can come through and also in its own way comment on what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed, even for instance, Mojo, a big part of his character is that he plays the piano in different places. Wherever, Mojo and Jack are, he gets a gig playing piano somewhere. And that's Tim Clark, I'm assuming.
No, it's not. Actually, no, it's a person. He's no longer with us. It's George Schutz. Now, George was originally trained as a classic, a composition or a composer, or to perform, concert. He was a concert person, but he was sort of forced to it as a kid, and so he just gave it up and he became a promoter of various groups and so on. But as a side thing, he would play, but he wouldn't play to anyone. But he did play to one of the ZBS people that were staying at his place in New York, and that was Patty, and Patty said, "You've got to hear George," and so I think his wife talked him into allowing us to record him, and George has played a lot of songs, and so we decided we'll have Mojo be the
guy that plays.
Yeah, and so that's how. And plus, Mojo's very much. He knows a lot of Mojo's passed, unfortunately, but he knew a lot about voodoo as well as other mystical things. So that was part of his life. And in fact, for the fourth moon over Morocco, which was the first thing he was in, I was writing it, and we were about to record, and I called Mojo to Dave Adams, and I suddenly realized here I'm scheduling him to come up, and I never even asked him to do it. And I forgot, and I didn't even know if Mojo could act. And so he said, "Of course I'll do it." And he came up, and he just played himself. And I said, "That's all I want. I want you to be yourself," and that's what he did.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that, about the moon over Morocco. Now, those sounds, the sounds that you have, like the when Mojo is going, when Jack is going through the gate, all the music. I've actually been to Morocco, and I've heard it. Did you? I'm assuming did you go to Morocco to record?
Yeah. When I was living in London, someone hired me to go down to Paul Bowles, to go down, and the novelist Paul Bowles, go to Tangier and interview Paul Bowles. And when I was there, I had my what was called a Uhr, which was a German-made portable. Yeah, very good.
I was going to ask you about the equipment. Was that a cassette or a reel-to-reel?
Yeah, no, it was a reel-to-reel. It predates cassettes, and at the time, I was, not only was he with the interviews that I did with Paul, did he tell about, Morocco and where I got a lot of the ideas from. I realized that he said, "Oh, you must go to Marrakesh," and so on. And so I was able, once we started ZBS, I was able to go back there and again, meet Paul and spend some time with Paul and his wife. And his wife, Jane, was a wonderful person. She's also a writer, both paths. But I traveled around, and I knew places to go to record because having been there before. So the sounds all came from, and then a lot of the Moroccan music that Paul had done recordings for a Library of Congress, but there were a lot of music that they never used. So he said, "Here, you can have this." And so I had a lot of great Moroccan chant music, and as well as the sounds of Morocco.
Now, when you went to Morocco, did you record sounds to what you had written, or did you record the sounds and then write based on the sounds you recorded?
It was really based on the sounds. It was mainly based on the sounds. It was like, people doing films find interesting locations to set the scene in, and that's what I was doing. I would hear a sound like I was meeting someone who was a friend of Paul's, and it was in an area that he had a couple caged birds, and they were making sounds. And I said, "Oh, I got to write a scene that takes place in that." It would be that kind of thing. You say, "Oh, wait, I got to use this sound. How could I do it? I'll just write it into the script."
To me, that's interesting because, like, as a songwriter, people always ask you the same thing: what comes first, the music or the lyrics? And sometimes, a lot of times, they happen at the same time. But a lot of times, for me, it's the music first. If you come up with a certain riff or a certain chord or a certain set of chords that elicits, a certain feeling, it inspires lyrics. That's why I was really interested in that. And now you did this for, he goes to Indonesia, and you went to Indonesia, right, to record that?
Yeah. Went to Bali, and then Sumatra, and
now, did you go there to record in order to write for Jack Flanders, or did you go there for some other reason?
No, to write for Jack Flanders, but also too, I wanted to see it. I would pick countries that I figured the sounds would be interesting. I'd do some research, obviously. And then, I'd find a way of going there. Sometimes I could get donations from people, that kind of thing. And also, too, in the earlier years, there was through the National Endowment for the Arts, and they had a radio fund, and there was funding for doing
So
radio.
you got grants to do this?
I did in the beginning, but not in the Fourth Tower and so on. It wasn't until the 90s, actually, that the grants were possible.
Well, I mean, I think I'm pretty much, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to ask you about. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I really, the whole idea of recording sounds and then writing stories based on that is fascinating to me. Oh yeah, I did want to ask you, so in the early days, this was the equipment that you used was this Ewer thing that you were talking about. How did that change? And did you ever use digital recorders or anything like that? Did you we got these tiny little things that record great sounds now. Did you ever get into that, or did you always use the reel-to-reel?
Oh no, it was moving with the technology, because we started out, that was essentially what there was, and talking about radio, in the 60s, was reel to reel. And certainly when we started ZBS, we had a 4-track machine. I did Mido Morocco with three other machines, plus the 4-track, all rolling at the same time, because I had so many sounds to put in. There was no way, then later we got an 8-track, that kind of thing. But in terms of portable equipment, it was reel to reel. Started off way back when I was in Berkeley with a reel to reel recorder. And then I tried the cassette recordings, and I had several different cassette, but I was never, though they were lighter and so on, I was never that happy. I never, and then DAT, which was never became very popular, but DAT was a great, because they were a little tiny, but they wouldn't allow it. I got one from Japan. Friend going into Japan brought me one, and I was able to record digitally early on, and
they had these portable. They had these. There was a DAP that was really that you could put over your shoulder. It had a leather case, and I don't know if you ever. And that was a great portable machine, and it recorded great quality.
And the Ewer, the Sony, what they call
Walkman?
It was a Sony video recorder.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
that's right. We used VCRs for a while to record.
Yeah,
well, right.
Yeah, in this case, it wasn't a VCR. It was smaller, but the sound was. It didn't become popular. Why am I not thinking? It didn't become popular because it would only record like an hour in terms of video. Right. It was a video recorder that you recorded sound, but they came out with one the same size and was relatively small, but a separate machine, and that actually recorded where the video would be. So meaning you had a tape which was close to half an inch wide that you recorded sound on, and even to this day, the sound is great. I mean, the sound is really, really close to what the sound was.
Right.
And,
yeah. I remember. I wanted to ask you about the crazy, one of the most amazing, the machine in Steam Dreamers of Inverness that you came up with. This whole kind of, wow, what was it? steamoscopic camera that you came up with for this story. How did you, and also about working with Ram Dass. So yeah, talk about that whole thing.
Yeah, well, the other was just a fictional kind of device, obviously, that the steam operated
with coal, right?
Yeah, yeah. And well, that sort of came out of that steampunk kind of idea, steampunk in the sense that if the technology had stayed the same, so to speak, that is with recording with steam operated instead of going on into other types of technology,
right,
that they would make steam operated interesting things, and so that was the idea for that. In terms of Ram Dass was someone that, well, we liked Ram Dass, from goes way back,
right,
in terms of ZBS, and we had friends that worked with a radio station in Montreal that went to India with Ram Dass, and so I wanted to use little bits of Ram Dass. We had a friend who had recorded and other people recording Ram Dass, but he sold, legally with Ram Dass, he sold his recordings. So Ram Dass had all these recordings of his darshan or his lectures, and so we had access because we had a bunch of them here, copies of them. And I wanted to use little bits of Ram Dass in the Fourth Tower of Inverness.
Right.
And so I wrote to Ram Dass, and he was living he was in England at the time. And he, and I can't remember, he was not very keen on it, but I thought, oh, these are just little bits. What the heck? So I used them. They're scattered throughout the Fourth Tower of Inverness, and that was the Wurlitzer of Wisdom, the jukebox.
Yes,
an old jukebox that played little bits of Ram Dass as well. Actually, there's a beatard in there too. But then Ram Dass decided to our friends. Ram Dass wanted to do record and recordings,
yes.
and because of our friends that knew up in Montreal, they said, "Oh, ZBS, it's in the country, blah blah blah." And so Ram Dass came here, and we were mixing his various things. Did some recording here, but a lot of it he was tapes and things he brought. And I was standing at the board right next to him, and Ram Dass looked at me and he said, "I hear you used my recording." Now, what went through my head was, well, I can't come up with any excuse, because anything I say, it's going to sound like I'm lying. Even if it's telling the truth. And so I looked at him and I just said, yes. That was it.
That was it.
And then there was a long pause, and he looked at me and then he nodded, and nothing more was ever said.
Wow. Yeah, that's
I find out when you get caught, just admit it.
Right. Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting if that happened with our politicians? Yeah.
But let's not go there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm once again, it's an absolute honor. And I just want to say, for me, I actually became Facebook friends with Robert Lorick. And
really?
Yeah. And one of the things that I said when I wrote to him was, I don't know why it is, I can't explain it, but these dramas and what Jack Flanders does, it's just it does something. It's almost I want to say therapy. There's something about it that, as I said, I went through some rough times in New York, wondering what the hell I had done moving there in my 30s. And these were kind of things that would get me through. I would put them on, I'd be flying, to like Tokyo or something. And so I had time, and I put the noise canceling headphones on the plane, and boy, the time just went by,
That sounds, yeah. Robert's good. Robert, he was also the voice of Chanel. He did all the Chanel commercials.
I did find that out. I researched that.
And
he was quite
besides,
a
he wrote a
successful
couple of
voice
Broadway
actor.
plays too. So.
What's that?
He wrote a couple of Broadway plays. There was one
Tap Dance Kid, I think.
Yeah, with Gregory Hines and so on. Yeah, he was really a nice guy, easy to work with. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I did hear some of the podcasts where you talk about working with different actors, and it was, but I really, as I said, it really has kind of changed my life. I wrote a song about Jack. I don't know. Did you ever hear it?
I don't know.
I wrote a song on my album Badass and Blind called Jack.
Oh,
and it's a kind of a tribute song to Jack Flanders.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah. If you I think you can find it pretty easily if you say Jack by Raul Midon. It's there.
I will do that.
And
I will do that. Did he have a chance to hear it, by the way?
What's that?
Did Robert have a chance to hear it? Or?
I don't think so. I think it might have been done. It might have gotten finished and mixed after he passed, because I remember he was having a kidney situation.
Right. Yeah.
And he actually wrote on Facebook. He said, "Listen, I know that's a long shot, but if anybody has a kidney, they could, So, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's about it as far as my questions go.
Okay. we're still doing it, by the way. I mean, I'm right now editing, because I've been recording another Ruby, and Ruby, first one was done 47 years ago, and still some of the main characters are still around, and I'm still working with them. So.
Yeah, I mean, I to me, the longevity of what's happened, the fact that I think, what was it, 73 or 72 or something with the moon over, or the fourth tower.
Yeah.
And that it's still going on. And I do hear the little short snippets. We have a music station that plays little ZB. Oh yeah, I did want to talk about this, because most people don't know what ZBS is, what it means, and I love it. I mean, I'm a so maybe you could talk about why you call, I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of a spoof on CBS, right? But
no, actually, but in a way, that is, we had for the first 2 years, we had a business manager, Larry, and Larry would go down to New York and try to, talk people into funding us, or, promoting us, or whatever. And since we were we started off hoping to be a commercial, but we ended up being a non-commercial sort of production company. But to get to past secretaries, Larry discovered that because you can never get to the person who you really want to talk to, because the secretaries are there. And so they would say, who's calling? And Larry said, this is Larry Klein from CBS. And they said, CBS? Oh, okay, we'll put you right up. And then Larry would give the guy this pitch, and somewhere in the pitch, the guy said, wait, you ZBS or CBS? Are you calling from?
Yeah.
He said, no, ZBS. And so the secretary got the blame, but ZBS, which is also Larry's idea, was originally meant zero bullshit.
Yes.
And still to this day, it took a long time before we told anyone that, because
No, when I first heard that, I just loved it. Zero bullshit. That's just awesome.
Yeah, it's a high ideal that we haven't quite achieved yet.
Well, as I say, it's been a real force in my life. I've always been, as a creative person, I love what you do. I was saying, that, for me, even though nowadays with movies, there's a lot of, Netflix now, and these people have like descriptive services, which is really helpful for me, as a blind person. But man, these things are designed to be listened to, and there's nothing that I'm going to be missing, as opposed to, growing up, going to movies. It was like, okay, I had to imagine the things that they're assuming that you see when you're, watching a movie or a TV show. Whereas with this, everything has to come through, not just the dialogue, but the background. If you're by a river, you have to hear that river, and that's how it is for me, right?
Yeah.
If you're kayaking, like with Saratoga Fat Cats,
right.
It's gotta sound like you're in the kayak.
Yeah, and we were too.
Yeah, I know. I know. I mean, and that, to me, that is the, I don't know, I guess the genius, or the of what you're doing. My wife and I are very much into old time radio, so that we know about all the stuff, all the theater, Marlowe and Jack Benny and Gunsmoke. Oh my God, I was a huge fan of Gunsmoke.
Right.
But the sound design, and even the only other broadcasters that are still into doing radio drama is the BBC. And they do quite a bit of amazing things, but there's nothing like ZBS, like what you guys do, as far as I can tell.
I think part of it is that radio, generally, you need to record, have a certain level so that everyone gets it. I mean, more or less. But I realize that if you want to sell it, I mean, I wanted it to have several levels, so that you needed to hear it more than once to get the other levels. And also, too, I found out, with people knowing they can't get it all, they want to own it. So then you sell copies to them. So that's
right.
How we survived.
Yeah. I mean, I find it's pretty amazing that you were able to do this. I mean, this is not blockbuster movies, that you were able to do this and keep it going, and have it
not having to work for anyone.
Yeah. Well, see, and I'm in the same exact place.
Excellent.
We have managed to create a situation where, I now have my own label, and I write my own songs. I own my publishing, and whatever. It's added responsibility, but it's also added reward. So
Yeah, freedom costs something, but it's
absolutely.
It's worth the effort.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I'm glad you agreed to do this, because I really wanted a chance to talk to you. And there was, we're thinking, I want to talk to, but I wanted to talk to somebody that that really influenced me, as opposed to somebody that's somebody with a huge name or whatever. I wanted to talk to somebody that really made a difference for me. So that was you.
Thank you.
So, Thomas, how can people hear these? Because I'm sure many people haven't heard all your productions before. Are they available to buy or stream? Where can people go?
We have two. Again, we're not, ZBS Foundation is not for profit, so ZBS.org online really has everything. Either as mainly downloads, but the certain ones you can still get CDs of, and certainly USBs too. And we have a second site, which is a streaming website, and that's zbsmedia.com. And in that case, it has everything, and you can stream it, and it costs $5 a month or $55 for the year, and that kind of thing. And that is, I don't know, close to 300 hours. So there's quite a bit of
there's a lot of stuff, and
yeah.
I would encourage people, even just listen to a little bit of this, because there's nothing like it out there in the world. There really isn't. And even if you don't have headphones, it's still awesome. but with headphones, especially the stuff you did with Fritz, it's unlike anything. Because of the binaural aspect of it. It really is. When somebody knocks on the door, I know what I'm listening to, and it still scares me, because I think somebody's knocking on my door.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
and it's in the drama.
And I'm scared myself recording with Fritz too, thinking that.
So what's a good to start with, Raul?
I did want to ask one other thing. I wanted to ask about, I noticed that you don't use much compression at all. Do you, when in terms of mastering, do you just sort of avoid that because you want it to sound as natural as possible?
Yeah, mainly because it varies, because stations you had to consider they compress. And how much do they compress?
Right. It was for radio.
And the problem we discovered early on, with the fourth tower, was that that you had somebody who was, say, 20 feet away, and you hear his voice, he's back there, and then he walks up to the mic, while he's talking. But then you hear it on radio where it's compressed, and it sounds like he's 5 feet away, and he's sort of, with his voice, he's raised
because
his
the
voice.
Compressor
keeps... and he's walks while he's talking, and the compressor has this compress.
Just compensated for the audio level change.
Exactly. So we do our best, and at least now you get much closer. That is when you are hearing it, and as opposed to hearing it on the radio.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Go ahead.
So, Raul, what's the best of the best? What should people listen to first?
Oh, man. I maybe you should ask Tom, because I don't know everything that he's done. But some of my favorites, The Steam Dreamers of Inverness is one of my favorites. Moon over Morocco is really, really good. It's, man, the thing I just listened to, the Fat Cats of Saratoga Fat Cats. It's like a detective story, but with a little twist. I mean, it's just so yeah. I mean, I would just check out some of those things. I guess, I don't know. I think people can try it. I think people can go to the zbsmedia.org and get a free trial. So you can have a week to check out all the stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Also, too, like Saratoga Fat Cats, all the Fritz recordings you do on location, you do out on the street. You don't do it in a studio because studios are, they're silent, and you want the sounds of the outside, the sounds of the rooms. Each room has its own sound, and you want to hear people in a distance walking up.
Yeah.
And,
I heard the thing where you said you got kicked out of a restaurant because you had
yes. Kicked out of more than one place, by the way.
you had the thing under your arm and somebody thought you were recording their conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to me because I tend to be, when I'm not on the road, I could stay down here all day and work on music. But for what you do, it's a much more out type of thing. I mean, you're not using sound libraries. You're recording the actual sounds.
Yeah.
And there's lots of sound libraries available these days.
Well, there's some good things now. I mean, there are some, not so much, to me, not so much the ambiance that is where it's taking place, as it's the very specific little sounds that sometimes, somebody's setting something down, a cup, and
right.
Different cups have different sounds, and it also depends what they're setting it on. You have to consider all that. And
there's a lot of beautiful sounds of pouring tea and pouring
right
drinks and all that, and it just brings it all to life.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, are you inspired for a song, Raoul?
Oh, absolutely. I'll definitely write something else.
Okay.
As I said, I've already written Jack, but I'll definitely write something.
Oh, great.
Brilliant. Well,
go ahead.
Well, we have this band here in Italy. We'd love to play with you. We'd love to do a backing track with you.
Oh, that'd be cool. Well,
yeah.
We'll start sending stuff back and forth. And
okay.
We'll see what we come up with. But man, Tom, once again, I am so honored that you agreed to do this. I never thought, and I am going to be in Saratoga in March. So
really, well,
yeah. So I definitely would like to meet you, or maybe check out ZBS. I don't know what my time will be, but I would love to do that.
Well, even if it's just meeting, that's perfectly fine. And either way, we're about 20 minutes from Saratoga. So.
Yeah, I'm going to be at this place, Cafe Lena or something.
Oh, Cafe Lena. Yeah, of course. Gosh, yes.
So
wonderful.
So I'll be there.
And a good friend does the sound with theirs, and you'll enjoy meeting him too.
Awesome. Well, I hope maybe we can meet up, have a coffee or something while I'm there, because it has been an incredible inspiration for me, what you do, just in terms of what's possible. The thing about creativity is, part of our job is to try to imagine things that are not, one of the reasons why I became a songwriter, and not just a singer that does covers, is because there's music in the world that I wanted that I didn't hear. So I want to put stuff out there that isn't out there, So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. It's been so inspiring hearing first about your music, Raoul, and now about these wonderful radio plays. I'm really excited, and I'm going to listen to a few of them.
Absolutely. You'll check them out, because it's like I say, it's really something, and you'll see why somebody that's into audio really loves these things.
Yeah. So. Well, I'm excited. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Time is a river rushing by my door. I hear the babble, it mystery of existences dances in my dreams, closing the distances. Nothing's what it seems. The call of possibility gives me the courage to be free, to open up my mind's eye to see what I can see. And I don't have to go there, 'cause I'm already here, on the road to nowhere as it disappears. When I'm feeling low down, like I'm just about near the end, I listen to the sound and it picks me up and takes me home again. Takes me home again. Takes me home again. With the sounds of another world painting pictures in my mind, traveling toward infinity, I leave this world behind. I don't need a TV screen to carry me away. I've got Frida, Jack, and Mojo Sam to take me where they may. And I don't have to go there, 'cause I'm already here, on a moving road to nowhere as it disappears. When I'm feeling low down, like I'm just about near the end, I listen to the sound and it picks me up. It takes me home again. Takes me home again. Takes me home again. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but for me I know that isn't so. 'Cause the pictures come to me in a woven tapestry of audio on the radio.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the song and the episode. The song will be released next week. It will be available on all streaming platforms, but you can already pre-save. Please support the artists by following them on social media and adding the song to any playlists you have. This is a completely free show, and you've listened this far, so I'd really appreciate it if you could pay us back by clicking like and subscribe. And follow at Podsongs on social media platforms, or subscribe to the newsletter at podsongs.com for special updates. Or just tell the next person you see about this amazing show where musicians interview their idols and write a song about them. The songs are available for download from the Podsongs website as well, which pays a lot more than the 0.00 whatever we get from Spotify. You can also email me at jack@podsongs.com to give feedback, suggest an artist and guest combos you'd like to hear, or just say hello. We're a listener-supported show, and I'd love to hear from you. A final thanks to my researchers, Dori Verbo and Rosa Marino, my producer, Maurizio Sanicola of Goldmine Records, and musicians Massimino Vozza and Luigi Falcione. The next episode will be out soon. In the meantime, you can listen to more amazing episodes in the archives. Until then, have a great day.